big sound in a small town, far away from the big city lights, making music every night. Good music with all our friends. Tell everybody, tell your mama and them, we're going out and we're getting down. A big sound in a small town. A big sound in a small town. A big sound in a small town. A big sound in a small town.
Hi, and welcome to Big Sound Small Town. I'm your host, Sandy Carlton, and this is a podcast about the lives and stories of the musicians, writers, artists, and their associates that have their roots in the small towns and communities across America. If you like what you hear, tell somebody. Enjoy. My guest today, Thomm Jutz, is nominated for a 2021 Grammy for his To Live in Two Worlds Volume 1 album, and in the same bluegrass category as his is the John Hartford Fiddle Tunes project. Ironically, Thomm has a song on his Grammy-nominated album called Hartford's Bend. I just think that's pretty ironic that the two would both be up for a Grammy nomination, which is just a great nod to the late John Hartford.
They're still blowing their whistles on the Cumberland River when they're coming around Hartford's Bend. It's a tip of the cap to the man with a hat, every riverboat captain's friend, with his fiddle and bow. Tapped in some shoes, keeping time. The sweet refrain of the Julia bell swayed ever gentle on my mind. He said nothing is real but the river, and nothing is true but a song. They're still blowing their whistle on the Cumberland River when they're coming around Hartford's Bend. It's a tip of the cap to the man with a hat, every riverboat captain's friend. So roll on into the sunset, somewhere beyond the sea. And they're still blowing their whistles on the Cumberland River when they're coming around Hartford's Bend. It's the tip of the cap to the man with a hat, every riverboat captain's friend. It's the tip of the cap to the man with a hat, every riverboat captain's friend.
Hello, my name is Thomm Jutz. I'm here in Nashville, Tennessee. I've been here for almost 20 years. I was born in Germany at the tail end of 1969 and moved full-time to the United States in 2003. My wife and I had been coming to the States a lot before then, and mainly went to Texas and Nashville and we knew we wanted to move to the States because my wife had lived here as a child for several years and always wanted to come back, and I was a little burned out with what I was doing in Europe and wanted to explore if I could make a go of it here in the music scene in America. And after going to Texas for a while, we realized that we really wanted to be in Nashville. Yeah. And so that's what I've been doing for the last 20 years. I write a lot of songs. I produce records for other people. I have a studio here in my house. I teach songwriting in the songwriting program at Belmont University, and I make my own records. And just made 2 records last year called To Live in Two Worlds, Volume 1 and 2. And I'm currently working on a record with Tammy Rogers of the Steel Drivers, and that's going to be out sometime soon, I hope.
That's really good. All right. Well, now one of your records is nominated for a big award. Is that correct?
Yes. To Live in Two Worlds, Volume 1 is nominated for Best Bluegrass Album for a Grammy in the Best Bluegrass Album category. And that's something that I never in a million years would have expected. I would have maybe expected to have a song on a Grammy-winning record or something, but never in a million years that as an artist I would get a Grammy nomination. So it caught me by surprise. My friend Peter Cooper called me and said, "Hey, I was just watching the nominations and you were nominated." And I was like, "Well, no, isn't that the category where like everybody's just like can put in?" And he's like, "No, you're one of the 5 nominees." And it's obviously a great honor to be nominated along with the John Hartford Fiddle Project and Canyon Rangers, and also with Billy Strings, who's a great guitar player, and also Danny Barnes is the 5th one, who's a great banjo player from California.
Yeah, that's pretty that's pretty high level people to be grouped with. They're all very talented. You want to talk about that record just a little bit? It's
sure.
I've listened. It's a wonderful record, steeped in almost an old time tradition.
Yeah, I'm glad you say that, because it was sort of my aim with this record was to bridge the gap a little bit between contemporary bluegrass music and more of a string band kind of sound, more of an old style. And I was deliberately selecting songs that sound older to me and that talk about older, more historical topics. And so the people who play on the record support that sound, especially the great Mike Compton on mandolin, who plays more of an older type of mandolin playing. And that's not saying that I don't like modern mandolin players. This is just saying that I love his style and his approach and his tone, and he's a good friend, and he's also one of my absolute musical heroes because he understands all that stuff from Bill Monroe and back so well, and can speak very eloquently about it and not just play it. And then Tammy Rogers is also somebody who plays with a more, to my ear, with a little more of an aggressive style than most fiddle players in bluegrass today. And that might be because she's been playing with the Steel Drivers for such a long time, and she's also very well versed in classical music and was born in East Tennessee and grew up in Texas. And so she lives in two worlds too, ironically, in terms of her ability to play various styles. And then my friends Justin Mosen and Mark Chain played bass and banjo on this record, who are both people that I wouldn't want to do anything without them, really. And so I had just signed a deal with Mountain Home Records, and they wanted me to do 2 records. And I said, okay, well, here's this thing. I have this thing in my mind that I want to make a record just with me singing and playing at the same time, with an old ribbon microphone. That's sort of that produces the sound that we're used to from really old records. And Mickey Gamble, the head of Mountain Home, is a forward-thinking and very smart and kind man. And he was like, sure, why don't you do that? But let's make a bluegrass record too. So we did both of those things. And then we got to thinking and thought, like, well, if you put the band record out first and then the solo record's probably going to, just by the nature of its sound, is going to suffer a little bit in terms of the attention that it gets. And so we came up with the idea of combining the two. So on the record now, you'll hear a band song that's always followed by a solo song. But not just that, they're also thematically intertwined. So there's a song about Charlie Poole, and that's followed by a song about some of my other old-time music heroes like Blind Willie McTell and Skip James and people like that. So there's a thread going through the record, and the songs are sort of like the links that interconnect everything. That's the best I think I can explain it.
Well, one of the things I really enjoyed about it is a departure from modern bluegrass, and it steps to a different age, but with a modern sound. I don't know if that really conveys it or not, but you know, it's been a long time since a old time feeling record has been done in bluegrass, and I think that addresses it. It has an old time feel as much as it does a bluegrass feel.
Right. Well, thank you for saying that, and I'm glad you feel that way, because that was what I was intended to, thematically and musically. And I think what's interesting to me in music is to try to reach forward with one arm and to reach backward with the other arm.
That's a good way of thinking. I like that. So
tonally, it's certainly contemporary in the sense that it's recorded at a very high level,
right.
But in the choice of what instruments we play and how we play them, I think it's a little more old-timey, and it's less slick. Not that there's anything wrong with being slick in bluegrass. That's totally fine. It's just a choice. But my choice was slightly different for this record. And that's also, nobody's going to mistake me for the world's greatest singer. So it also works with my vocals, and it works with the themes of the songs, which are very often in my case, not written from a first-person perspective in the sense that I'm writing about myself. I quite enjoy writing from other people's perspective.
I certainly hope that's not from your perspective, because there is the traditional murder ballads on there.
Yeah.
I mean, but that is part of it. I mean, to convey that is a part of Appalachian music.
Yeah, I think it's part of Appalachian music. It's part of Appalachian culture in the storytelling sense.
Yeah.
I think it's in the tradition of old songs that speak about natural disasters or murders or the death of Queen Jane or Gypsy Davy who came riding through the, So you tell a story, and I think that's so important to us as humans. That's why we started painting animals on the walls of caves, because we wanted to let somebody know what we're doing and what we've been doing while we were here in this world. And I think there's a trend in not just in bluegrass music, but in popular music overall, that songwriters feel that everything has to be written from their autobiographical perspective. And I think that, to me, that would feel very claustrophobic. I think writing, I think what's more important in writing is that you accurately and with empathy talk about the feelings of somebody else. And that means sometimes that you have to do your research. How did somebody feel? How did somebody feel in the Civil War? Or what happened at the Shelton Laurel Massacre, or those kind of things? And that's just what interests me. That's what I like to read. That's what I like to think about. And so it's only natural that it comes out in my writing.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I tried to wrap myself around was how you got to that point, and I just took it that you were a history buff probably most of your life.
Well, I'm not even calling myself a history buff. I'm just interested in certain things, and I pursue them in my reading. And yes, I've always been interested in American music, and then, starting when I was 11 years old, when I started playing this kind of music or learning about this kind of music. And to me, it's it's part of a natural curiosity to figure out where does the music that you play come from.
Right.
I mean, blues music didn't start with Eric Clapton, and bluegrass music didn't start with Tony Rice. And I love Tony Rice more than anything else probably in this world. But I love to go back, and it's interesting because it's a journey that keeps going on. Just when you think, okay, now I've heard something that I've never heard before that's like from the 30s, and you go like, wow, that's the greatest thing ever. You realize that there's something else. There's another rabbit hole that you could go down, and that's the beauty of American music, because it's a confluence of so many different cultures, and to me that also makes not a political but a cultural statement. It's the music not of American people are a lot of different people from a lot of different groups, and studying that is interesting to me.
Did you have a hard time accessing music, or did you have access to American music much in Germany growing up?
That's a really good question. The first time I distinctly heard American music was when I was probably about 8 or 9 years old, and I had a little radio, and I was just flipping through the stations, and I heard Canadian Forces Network and AFN, American Forces Network, and that's where I first heard the sounds of country music. And I couldn't identify it. Obviously, I didn't speak English when I was 8 years old. I started taking English lessons in school when I was 10. But so it was just the tones that spoke to me first, especially the pedal steel guitar and the dobro, and I didn't know what those instruments were. It sounded to me like a mix between a guitar and a saxophone, because I just didn't know what it was, Right. And then there was a TV show that focused on country music, and that's where I first saw Bobby Bare, and that made a really, really big impact on me. And then I grew up in a fairly rural part of southwestern Germany, and I mean, we weren't cut off from culture or anything, but it was not. Obviously, it's all way pre-internet, so it wasn't like you could just order Doc Watson records.
Right, yeah, exactly.
So maybe once or twice a year, we'd go to the next bigger city that was like maybe 30 miles away, and there were a couple of record stores, and my parents were always cool about encouraging me with any of my musical endeavors. So I got to tell you the truth. A lot of records I just bought on instinct. Like I distinctly remember buying my first Doc Watson record called Down South. It's Doc and Merle Watson.
Yeah.
And I didn't know who Doc Watson was. I just bought it because the photo on the cover spoke to me. It's Doc and Merle sitting on the porch of an old country store. And to me, as much as that's a cliche, it spoke to me as a 13, 14-year-old person who wanted to learn more about this music, and I took it home, and obviously my world was changed after that, and I distinctly remember hearing Jerry Douglas play ironically on a Dan Fogelberg record, and I just went like, this is incredible. It's got to be somebody with a slide, but how can he play so fast? And so, and I had never heard anybody play the dobro before. I didn't even know what it looked like. So, it's just a crash course in American music. And then obviously, once I was like when I was probably like 18 or 19 years old and able to drive and go to concerts and seek out, and there's also a lot of coincidences. I had a really good English teacher in my last 2 years of high school who knew a lot about American Irish folk music and who guided me to certain things, and I'm always grateful for him for that. Guided me to American literature too, and then at that point my wife and I had been together for a couple of years, and so the fact that she had lived in the States and was introduced to other kinds of music than kids in Germany, that was a bond between us that we could talk about. Right. She knew who certain people were and had listened to country music and didn't think it was hokey or something, which probably most people in Germany at the time thought.
Yeah, probably they did. Were you playing I guess you were playing some musical instrument at this time in your life?
Yes. I started playing piano and flute when I was about 6 years old, and I became a really, really good flute player and won a couple of contests. And it was clear that to my parents, and maybe not consciously to me, but I knew that I had a certain amount of talent.
Right.
And then once I saw Bobby Bare, it was just all over. I walked to my sister had a guitar, and I borrowed that guitar and started playing that day. And that's sort of, that day changed the trajectory of my entire life.
Yeah, Bobby Bare. Now that is a special individual, you know. But you know, that is funny because okay, let me ask you this: at that time, did you know who Jethro Tull was when you were a flute player?
No, I did not. No,
okay,
no, that's
I didn't know if that was even in. You know, I'm sure it was classical music, but
it was.
But I just wondered if that even crossed your mind or your path thought at that time, or Marshall Tucker band, as far as that goes. Whichever.
No, neither one. You know, by the time I was aware of who Jethro Tull was, I was done with the flute, and it was all about the guitar.
Oh yeah, I understand. Yeah. So I guess once you started playing guitar, you started playing country music for the most part, right?
I tried to, but there were not a lot of people that you could play that kind of music where I grew up. So mostly, at first, I played in the typical cover rock blues bands where we, covered Cream and Eric Clapton and Led Zeppelin and that kind of stuff. And then I also studied classical guitar. And once I was done with high school, I studied classical guitar in university for a while. And then in my 20s, I befriended a couple of expatriates who lived in Germany, a guy called Richard Dawson, who became one of my best friends, and who was a wonderful songwriter.
A great songwriter, yeah.
Yeah, his songs were recorded by Johnny Cash, by Guy Clark, by Steve Earle, just recently by Chris Stapleton, actually.
Yeah, and my buddies in Songs from the Road band, I think, have one of his songs too.
Oh, wow.
So
I didn't know that.
Yep.
Wow.
So, yeah, he's a great writer.
He's a wonderful writer, and he was living in Switzerland for the last 20 years of his life. He had married a Swiss lady, and where I lived in Germany was just about 2.5 hours from where he was. And so we connected, ironically, at an event in Texas. The first annual Townsend Event wake that I attended was actually my first night in the United States.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And he was there, and we got to know each other a little bit, and then hooked back up back in Germany, and I had a small recording studio there, and we started recording there and hanging out and became friends, and then booked some gigs, and it led to a really wonderful friendship that lasted for almost probably like 25 years, I would say.
That's great.
And he passed away 3 years ago, and we made a bunch of his records together, and he really introduced me to the finer points of songwriting, through his work. You learn these things by talking to people and by paying attention, not so much by, here's what you do. It's all about keeping your ears open. It's like being around your granddad and watching him fix something, and that's sort of how you learn. So he introduced me to some great writers like David Olney, who I probably didn't know much before. And then once I moved here to Nashville, I started actually playing guitar with David Olney for a while, and with Mary Gaucher, and then with Nancy Griffiths for 5 years. And so I was always around really good songwriting. And I think, I'm not saying that any of it rubs off, but if you pay attention, you absorb some of it, and you just know where the standard needs to be.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, all those people that you just spoke of are all fine songwriters.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's funny. A trip to Texas changed my songwriting life too. Kerrville Folk Festival just totally changed my songwriting. I went there and realized that I just thought I was a songwriter, but that's how you do it. I mean, you have to be around people that write songs, and it's a learning process, just like learning an instrument.
Yes. And it's a muscle too. You have to practice it to stay good at it.
Yes, you do. You do. And
I also think that it's natural that that you look back at what you wrote in your 20s and you go like, yeah, maybe not so much. And then, you look back at what you wrote in your 30s and you go like, yeah, that's a little better, but it's not how I want to do it today. And I think it's normal. It needs to change. It's a process. It's not an event.
Right. Yeah, I agree totally with that. So when you first got to Nashville, I mean, was that a little bit scary?
Oh my God, it was absolutely ridiculously scary. And I was miserable leading up to it because it meant, I had sort of a middle class income in Europe playing music,
right.
and it was like, okay, let's leave all of that behind and book a one-way ticket and go to Nashville and make this work. And the saving grace was again that I knew people like Richard Dobson and some other people in town so I had a little bit of a place to go to in terms of relationships, but
right.
It was very scary for the first couple of weeks where you just go like, what the hell am I doing?
What have I done? Yeah.
This ridiculous amount of talent, and you just don't even know where to begin, but then you begin, and again, I was also very lucky, a lot of things happened for me that are not, that I can't take for granted or couldn't take for granted, so just somebody from Knoxville contacted me who hadn't known about me through my work with Richard Dobson and went like, hey, I'm a songwriter. I want you to produce my record. And this was like a week and a half after we'd been to Nashville. And I was like, well, wow, this is easy. I can do this. And obviously it got a lot harder after that, but it provided me with a little bit of a sense of, okay, it's doable, right. Like here's a little bit of work and here's a little bit of work. And I had, like I said, I had a good, financially a relatively good career in Europe. So I wasn't starving.
Right.
And my wife's work as a self-employed translator was going on. So I didn't have to go somewhere and dig a ditch.
Right.
I could really focus on the music. And so it was just very lucky, but it's also, I always remind, the harder you work, the luckier you get.
Yeah, you do. I agree totally with that.
And I think I've had good work ethic with all the people that I was playing with. Nobody ever had to worry about me being on time or being too drunk or being too this or being too that. It's like, and that's what you have to do. And that's what you learn when you come to Nashville. It's like, these folks are serious about what they're doing, whether it's songwriting or whether it's playing or sessions or, so you absorb it. I think.
Well, it's one of those things that I think people don't have no idea how much hard work goes into it, and a lot of it is, as you say, being on time, being not a problem.
Yeah.
I mean, I've known so many people to go, and their biggest problem wasn't talent, but their social skills left a lot to be desired. And
oh, absolutely.
So, I mean, that's a big part of it too. I mean, you have to learn to fit in your place.
Yeah, you have to learn to get along with people.
You do. Was being from Germany, did you ever face, well, he can't be a serious country music person. I mean, did that happen with you?
No,
That's great.
It really didn't. It really didn't. I have to say that everybody was very welcoming, and it was maybe even a little bit of the opposite at the beginning. It was more like an asset because people were going like, well, maybe, or at least looking back, maybe I think that some people were like, well, let's see what this guy got going, And hopefully that's worn off because I'd really want to be evaluated or appreciated by the quality of my work and not by being a novelty person or something like that. And I think that's over now,
Probably is.
Of course, it's something that'll always be a part of the narrative when folks evaluate my work or talk about me or something, and that's okay. Everybody's from somewhere. I mean,
right.
It's just better.
Well, and music does not care really where you're from. Music is a universal language. You can play music with anyone from anywhere. So people, as long as you can play and are easy to work with, nobody cares.
Yeah, I would like to believe so, yes. And certainly in my case, I mean, it's somebody once told me, well, you're never going to play the guitar like so-and-so if you're not from East Tennessee and from North Carolina. And I actually agree with that.
True.
But you're going to play the guitar differently.
Sure.
And that's a part of the process as well, to change it a little bit, not necessarily because you want to change it, but because you bring something to it. When Mac, not to compare myself with Mac Wiseman, but when Mac joined Flatt and Scruggs, their sound changed, and when Mac joined Bill Monroe, Monroe's sound changed.
Sure.
Because Mac was more of a crooner. He wasn't as much of a mountain singer as some of the other folks.
Right. Oh yeah. I mean, we'll take Earl Scruggs. Banjo totally changed when he hit the scene. I mean, it was more of a clawhammer thing till Earl got there. And I mean, if music doesn't evolve from different places, then that's just a sad state of music. Music needs to evolve and grow.
Absolutely, I agree. It's an inherent that it has to do that.
I mean, you look at one of the biggest American music forms is jazz, and it has changed 100 different times over the years. So,
of course, yes.
And it's just the influence of different players from different places. I really believe that.
Oh yeah, and you can take that to look at our bodies. Our bodies are changing.
True.
The cells in our bodies are changing by the second. So it's only natural that our attitudes change, and it's natural that the way we express ourselves culturally, which is music, is one way of doing that changes too. Is just natural.
Now, okay, one other question while we're on this. This might be a little touchy. So how have you avoided the bro? I looked at who you produced and all, and you don't seem to have a bro country artist. Is that by intent?
I just don't think that anybody would think that that's my expertise would be in that area.
Great answer. I love it.
So nobody has approached me to do that. I do write a lot of stuff for TV and movie, and that's very separate from what I do as a songwriter in the bluegrass world, or whatever you want to call it. And I have written some more commercial sounding stuff for that, and I'm quite comfortable doing that, because at that moment I look at it as a learning curve. Somebody needs a certain thing, and I provide that, and my personal taste is completely irrelevant in that moment. It all becomes about can you actually pull it off, and at that moment it's exciting for that very reason. Now, do I want to write songs? I'm not knocking Florida Georgia Line. I think they do what they need to do, and that's fine. I don't care for it, but it also doesn't necessarily offend me.
Right.
I think there's a lot of more serious things to be offended by than
I think so.
Than Florida Georgia Line.
Do you have a song in a video game?
Oh, I have. Yes, I have. If you're referring to one particular song, yes, that's a song in a video game that's really popular. And to tell you the truth, I don't really even know what it's called. But I get tons of emails from people going like, "Where can we buy this song?" And I just have to go like, "Well, you can't really buy it anywhere. It's just in that video game." But that's not. I don't mean this to be bragging in any kind of way, but I've been doing this TV movie thing for over 10 years, so I have lots and lots of placements all over the world in TV and movie and advertising and video games and all that. And that's another part of making this music thing sustainable as a career. You have to diversify and generate multiple income streams, and that has been very, very helpful.
Oh yeah, I'm sure that has. I mean, that's another thing that people fail to realize is all the ways you have to work as a musician to have a money stream going on. It's not just as simple as standing on stage and singing.
No, it's not. And I really admire some of my colleagues who, under normal circumstances, just go out there and grind out 200 gigs a year.
Sure.
that's a wonderful way of living if that's what you want, but it can also really wear you out. And I sometimes question whether it's a very creative way of making a living. You know, if your only perspective is always to move from A to B, to me it wouldn't be. I don't know if it would provide me with enough input to write as much as I want to write.
Yeah, I think it's also, you reach a point where you know you're going to have to go out there and do this, and you know you're going to have to play those songs. And I mean, from my standpoint, I've learned over the years it's hard to play the same songs over and over and over.
Yeah.
Because you kind of get locked in. I mean, there's only, no matter how big you are, there's a window that you're going to be locked into those songs, particularly for the rest of your life. Which is, if you like that, if that is an enjoyment and provides you with a good income, then there's nothing in the world wrong with that.
Right.
But I do know people who are older now and realize that, I've got to do this because of the nature of it for the rest of my life, to a very old age. I've done a lot of shows with aging country musicians over the year who are at the point where possibly they wish they'd have chosen a different path, but some are still happy with it, but others, I probably should have diversified somewhere along the way.
Yes, I agree.
It's kind of the studio musician thing too. I think after a point, you've played just about everything you can play, and it's hard to keep evolving. But I mean, some people love to do that. So,
yeah, I mean that's a whole different thing, and a lot of people manage to keep that to keep evolving within that format and to enjoy it. And it's a lot of that has to do with the community aspect here in Nashville, where musicians are usually so tight with each other,
right.
And it's just fun to be together, and it's fun to be a part of a team that can work so effectively and productively, and that makes for a lot of the satisfaction in that world.
How much co-writing do you do?
99% of the time I co-write.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty much the Nashville style these days too. I mean, do you have a team that you work with, or do you just have certain partners you like better than others?
So I co-write all the time, pretty much all the time, but my approach is a little different from your typical Music Row songwriter who gets set up with co-writes by his publisher all the time and doesn't know who he's necessarily going to write with. I pretty much write with the same, I'd say, between 6 and maximum 10 people all the time.
Right.
And those are people that I really get along with well, and know that we'll not just get along with on a personal level, but on an artistic level, and it's an enjoyable process, and we'll get good results. And so every once in a while people send me some younger writers or people I haven't worked with, and sometimes it can be really good, sometimes it can be really bad.
Right.
So I live in my little mouse hole over here, and I'm quite happy in it. So
that's good. I mean, that is really good. Now, which do you prefer? Do you prefer being a performer, a songwriter, a producer? I mean, you have it all going on. A lot of people don't have those options.
Well, I think I like all of it.
As a whole, yeah.
As a whole, yes. I think if I would just, like I said, if I would just be playing gigs, I think it wouldn't be as satisfying as it is when you go back home and you teach and record and produce and write. And if I had to write 6 days a week, three co-writing sessions a day, it probably wear me out too. So I'm pretty happy with it. I realize now that we haven't played any gigs since March how much I miss
playing. I do too. Yeah.
And it's not like needing the applause of people.
No.
It's the interaction with an audience. It's the interaction with the people that you play with.
Yeah.
You don't miss your water till your well runs dry.
Right. Well, then how about the Belmont gig? How did that come along?
Okay, how did that come along? I had played a festival in Belfast, Northern Ireland, for several years with Nancy Griffith, and then by myself.
Right.
And I was introduced to the department chair of the songwriting program at Belmont through a friend, and I introduced him in turn to the people who organized that festival in Belfast, and that led to a relationship with Belmont University that's still going on every year with that festival. And so at some point, the department chair approached me and said, "Hey, why don't you mentor some of our students? We have this mentoring program." And I was like, "Yeah, sure, that sounds good." And then that led to him asking me the next year, "Hey, why don't you teach a class for us?" And I was like, "Okay, let's teach a class." And then somebody, a lecturer, quit, and he asked me, "Would you want to come on board as a lecturer?" Which is a 12-hour-a-week teaching load. And I was more than happy to do it, because at that point I was pretty familiar with most of the syllabi, and I'm 51 now. It feels like a good time to.
Right.
I feel like I have something to pass on to people, and it also it's healthy for me to be around young people, which I probably would to some extent avoid if I wouldn't be teaching.
True.
So it's good. It's good on a lot of levels, and it's satisfying when you see after you taught somebody for a semester that they have a better understanding of what they're doing and they got better at it. And sometimes it's fun to, it's always fun to play The Randall Knife by Guy Clark for a class and just see their jaws drop.
Right. Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
This is how good it can be.
True. That is true. It's what do you have going on now currently?
You mean right at the moment?
Mm-hmm. No, are you producing someone? Are you producing yourself?
Yeah. Okay. So before the pandemic, I started to record a bunch with the great country artist and songwriter Bill Anderson, and we had some sessions booked, but they had to be canceled. So hopefully we'll pick that back up. That's a work in progress. Tammy Rogers and I had started working on some. We considered them demos at the time before the pandemic, and then once the pandemic hit, we just talked about it one day and went like, let's make it a point not to sit here for a year and then look back and go like, what the hell did we do with this?
Right, during this year, yeah.
Right. Why didn't we do anything? And so we started. She has a studio in her house with her husband, and I have one here. So we started collaborating on. We took those initial recordings and polished them up a little bit and added some to it and recorded some more. And that's a record that's going to come out hopefully this spring on Mountain Home Records. So that's something is done right now, but it still needs to be mixed and sequenced and all that. And then my next project is probably going to be a duo record with Tim Stafford, who I've been writing with a whole lot since this pandemic started.
Right.
So we have a concept album that we want to talk about, or that we are talking about. And then I also want to make a duo record with Mike Compton, because we have been doing a lot of stuff together. And so I'm just excited about staying creative, about keeping the ball rolling, about collaborating with people. And, as long as I can work, I want to work, and I want to be creative, and I want to, maybe it's a selfish impulse, but it's something that's very entertaining to me and it's pleasing to me. And why should I not spend my life with something that I enjoy doing?
Well, you sure seem to have a lot of projects going on. And you also have one of the, you've got a whole different take on Nashville than most people I talk with. I admire the way that you set your career up. It is totally different. You have a lot of irons in the fire. I see that you are a hard worker. It's really good to talk to someone. I mean, your attitude through this whole pandemic thing seems to be wonderful.
Well, I mean, again, with my particular situation, I have a lot of irons in the fire because I have to have a lot of irons in the fire.
I understand you.
when I moved here, I thought I was going to be a guitar player and just go on the road with people or play sessions, and that never materialized to the extent as it has for other people. And looking back, that's a good thing, because it brought me where I'm at now. So I think I do have a different perspective, and I do think that's part of the insider-outsider energy. Not that I consider myself an outsider anymore in Nashville,
right.
but I'm still somebody who comes from a different place with different experiences and looks at things probably slightly differently.
Yeah, probably so. Yeah.
And I'm not saying that's inherently good. It's just a matter of fact. I was born somewhere else. I was brought up in a different cultural environment, and so that informs how I look at the world. Although I think that I'm fairly well assimilated immigrant. And I think that's important too. If you want to come here, then become a part of it.
Right.
Don't be a German living in Nashville. Become an American.
Right, I understand. Yeah, and become a Nashvilleian. Yeah, I understand. Okay, this is totally different. Are you able to follow soccer in America?
My friend Eric Brace, who I played with a lot, he's in East Nashville, and he's obsessed with European soccer, and he's got all the channels, and he watches the British Premier League and the German Bundesliga and all that. And I honestly, I'm so bad with audio visual stuff. And this is not a joke. I hardly know how to turn on RTV and where I don't have Netflix. I don't have any of these things. And so I haven't followed soccer while I was here. But whenever we tour in Europe, every Saturday at 6:05 p.m., 6:05 p.m., I turn on the TV and watch soccer. It's just, and the World Cup has been very exciting too.
Oh yeah, really exciting.
I think it's a great sport, and I'm excited that we have Nashville has a team now. So once we can go somewhere again without risking lives, I'm going to go support Nashville SC.
I think that's great. I'm a fan, and actually I have someone from my hometown who played soccer at Belmont, and I have grandsons that play it in college. So it's a big part of my life along with music. So
it's a great game. It's so athletic, and there's such a high skill level, and for the most part, it's non-violent, which I enjoy too.
Yeah, so. I agree totally. I agree totally. What else do I need to know, Thomm?
Oh, I think we covered a lot of ground. I don't know. I'm just trying. I don't know that people need to know a lot about me to begin with. It's just if people like the music, maybe that's. I would hope that it encourages people to read, to learn about history, to learn about us as a people, and to look at immigrants in maybe a different way, or just challenge the way you think a little bit,
I see it as a good roadmap. Your story is a good roadmap for anyone from anywhere going to a place like Nashville. And one of the things that you went to Texas, you went to Nashville, and I try to tell young folks this: you have to be where it is if you want to be successful in it. I mean, your career would have been totally different had you stayed in Europe.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Without a doubt. None of the things that happened over the last 20 years that I consider beneficial to my career, none of them, zero, would have happened if I would have stayed in Europe. Absolutely none of them.
You are a great success story. I mean, it is really. I mean, you've achieved at so many different levels.
Well, but thank you for saying that. But I don't walk around every day and reflect on my remarkable life. It's just something that came natural to me, and I did it. And I actually don't find it remarkable. I find it perplexing and surprising sometimes. But it's, you put in the work, and if you're genuine in your interest and in your work ethic, it would be unusual not to get anything going. You'd have to do something wrong. If you're, no matter if it's music or I don't know what else, if you put in the work and you're authentic in your desire to advance in a certain field, then it would be unnatural for it not to happen. And I'll be the first to tell you that I was extremely lucky, blessed, whatever you want to call it, to be able to make this happen. And I will also say that it has something to do with work ethic.
Sure,
but
it does.
it also has a lot to do with, I don't know, just being lucky, you know.
Well, certainly outside of Nashville, more people need to know your music and your work with other people's music, because it is really one of the fresh breaths coming out of Nashville. I'll just be truthful with you. It's fresh. It's new compared to the. I think it's more a tag that Nashville has acquired, and yours breaks the mold in the fact that people can look at Nashville as a music mecca and not just a country music mecca.
Oh yeah, that's a really good point. You know, it's easy to hate Nashville, and it's sometimes hard to love Nashville, especially when you've seen it change as much as it's changed. But it's still a town full of exceptionally talented people who are extremely hardworking, and if you're willing to put yourself in the middle of that, it'll be good for you, and something good will come out of it. Now, am I saying I'm going to stay in Nashville for the rest of my life? I don't know. I feel a strong pull to move to Western North Carolina at some point. Maybe not full time, but part time. But I feel, if you know, in terms of live music, if the world would be back to normal, I can take you to several places any given night of the week, and you'll hear some incredible music in Nashville.
Sure.
And what's happening on commercial country music radio is one thing, and what happens in the writing rooms and in the studios and in the bluegrass scene and in the symphony orchestra that we have and in the symphony hall and jazz club, that's a whole different thing. So it's not as homogenous as people want to depict it. You know, right. It's still a very exciting town.
Yeah, oh yeah, it is a very exciting town. Well, if you move to Western North Carolina, there are some incredible musicians. It is from Shelby West is full of some of the best musicians I've ever been around in my life.
Yeah.
So,
and that's, you know, I come from a mountain region in Germany, and maybe that's what attracts me to that part of the world so much. And obviously, the music, and that music is still such a big part of everyday life.
It is.
In Tennessee and in Kentucky and in Western North Carolina is really attractive to me.
It really is. I think I live in the best small music town in the whole United States. We people who have come from Shelby, North Carolina include beside Earl Scruggs and Don Gibson, Patty Loveless. That's just a small touch. I mean, Nashville is full of people working there right now from Shelby. I mean, my buddy Trey Hill. There's a lot of people working there, and you know, musically it's a small world sometimes.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, music is a connecting factor, you know, all over the world. It brings people together. It doesn't matter where you're from. But now you made me want to go to Shelby, so I'll come visit. You
do. Please do. Let me know. There's a lot of music to be heard and a lot of music history to look at. Also, the harmonica player, Sonny Terry, actually is from Shelby, North Carolina, too.
I did not know that. Wow. So, I'm a huge Sonny Terry fan. That's
my favorite. Me too.
And Brownie McGee's from Knoxville, Tennessee.
Yeah.
Which is surprising, too. So yeah, man, Sonny Terry is about as good as it gets.
Oh, I agree. Sonny Terry is about as good as it gets. That is one of the things I'm working on, is a Sonny Terry documentary.
Wow.
So,
I like, you know what, I love his harmonica playing, but I love his hollering and singing as much as his harmonica playing.
I mean, that is part of it. I think that's one of the things that separate him from a lot of the others, is the hoops and hollers.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm sure there's an explanation for that. I'm sure there's a rural farm background to doing that. You know?
Yeah, I'm sure there is.
Man, that'd be exciting to. Is it a film documentary, or a book?
It's all of the above. I mean, it's a work in progress, so we'll see what happens.
I love it.
But well, I wish you the best with your Grammy nomination too. That is really exciting.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that I'm going to win this, but that's not so much the point. You know, it's already great
Right.
to get that nod. And
but you've had that in bluegrass before too, as a songwriter, have you not?
Well, I was nominated for Songwriter of the Year 3 times, but I haven't won it.
Right. But
that's all right.
Yeah, it's okay. I mean, it's recognition of the work done, and you'll do the work anyway. So it's
absolutely.
It's always great. I mean,
yeah, you do the work because you want to do the work, not because you want somebody to put a medal around your.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, anyone who gets in the music business for anything other than the music will be really, really disappointed.
That's the truth right there.
You've been a very interesting guest. Will you get to attend that this year, or will that be virtual? The Grammys.
The Grammys are going to be. They were supposed to be tomorrow, but they moved it to March 31st, and I can't see how it's going to be in person, and certainly not going to be in person for me because I hate flying under the best of circumstances, and I sure don't want to sit on a plane with 2 masks and then be in LA. And I mean, I would love to go. Don't get me wrong. On any normal year, I'd be the first one to go. But I don't need to put myself in the middle of that and spend $3,000 on it.
No, I totally agree. I mean, you're taking yourself to a hotbed also. So I mean, it's
yeah.
I just got a first vaccine, so I feel
good for you.
Like the world. Yeah, the bad thing about it is you have to be old. But again, Thomm, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. You're a busy man, and I'm glad you could find time to do this.
I really, really enjoyed this. This was so good to talk to you, and great questions and great input from your creative perspective too. And I hope we'll see each other in Shelby, and I can't wait for that Sonny Terry thing. And thank you for all you do for music, and thanks for having me.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right, have a great day.
You too.
Bye.
Starve on Charlie's cut the rambling blues in a mill town. In a mill town, in a mill town, way down south. 13-hour shifts, and when the week is through, if you even made $1, you end up owing $2 in a mill town. In a mill town, in a mill town, way down south. Charlie plays the 5, sing the Piedmont blues just to stay alive in a mill town. In a mill town, in a mill town, way down south. You're running with the law, you spent the night in jail, sing the jailer's favorite song instead of hosting bail in a mill town. In a mill town, in a mill town, way down south. Flag a ride or jump an old caboose, anywhere is fine. He don't have a lot
shoes don't make enough to starve on Charlie's got the rambling blues.